The FNAF movies changed a lot more than most people realize. Characters were merged, villains were invented from scratch, and entire backstories were rewritten. So today, I'm explaining every major change the films made, starting with a villain who has zero business being in a horror movie about haunted robots. The Aunt Jane subplot. Here's the thing about Aunt Jane. She doesn't exist in the games. Not as a side character, not as a background reference, not even as a throwaway line. She is a completely original creation, and somehow she might be the most quietly disturbing villain in a movie about possessed animatronics. Her entire motivation is the government custody check, not Abby's safety, just money. She hires criminals to break into Freddy's and sabotage Mike's job, which directly triggers the animatronic kill sequences. So in a way, Aunt Jane has a higher body count than most of the haunted robots, which is, not ideal. But here's where it gets interesting. Golden Freddy shows up at her house. Not at the pizzeria, at her home. That's the first proof these animatronics can operate outside the restaurant, and the movie just casually drops that bombshell during a custody subplot. Her ending is even better. She tells people a giant golden bear attacked her in her living room, and the system responds by locking her in a mental institution. The woman who tried to game Child Protective Services gets silenced by the exact same kind of institution. That's the movie's thesis in miniature, handed to the character with zero supernatural powers. But if you think a greedy ant is unsettling, wait until you see what the movie does with those animatronics when they're actually being nice. The fort building scene. The same robots that tear a man's face apart at 2 a.m. are building a blanket fort with a little girl at noon. And somehow the movie wants you to be okay with both of those things. Here's the thing. In the games, the classic animatronics never do this. Freddy, Bonnie, Chica, Foxy, every single one of them exists as a lethal threat. Their interactions with living humans are exclusively stuff you into a suit until you die. There's no playtime. You infer their tragedy through newspaper clippings and cryptic minigames, not through watching Foxy help stack pillows. But the movie throws all of that out. Mike and Vanessa bring Abby to the pizzeria during the day, and what follows is this warm, sunlit montage where the animatronics just play with her. They build a fort. They act like kids. For about 3 minutes, you completely forget that these things have killed people. Fans pointed out this dynamic belongs in Security Breach, not a FNAF 1 adaptation. Glamrock Freddy protecting Gregory is a late game concept, and importing that companion energy into the original Haunted roster felt like skipping ahead. But here's where it gets complicated. The games always told us these animatronics are possessed by murdered children. The movie just showed us what that actually looks like. Kids playing. Kids trapped in metal bodies who still remember what joy feels like. You could argue that's not a betrayal of the source material. It's the logical conclusion of it. And this scene isn't just vibes. Abby's attachment to her animatronic friends is the direct cause of the sequel's plot. She runs away a year later to reconnect with them, awakens the marionette, and kicks off everything in FNAF 2. One blanket fort, that's all it took. But if one friendly afternoon can reshape the entire franchise timeline, wait until you see what Golden Freddy does when he leaves the building entirely. Golden Freddy's direct interaction with the living world. In the games, Golden Freddy is barely real. That's not an exaggeration. His appearances in FNAF 1 are framed as possible hallucinations. A slumped golden bear that materializes in your office, flashes "it's me" across your screen, and then crashes your entire game. Nobody knows if he's a suit, a ghost, or a glitch. He exists in the space between real and not real, and that ambiguity is the whole point. The movie looked at all of that and said, nah, he's punching someone in their living room. Film Golden Freddy is unmistakably corporeal. He builds pillow forts with Abby. He plays with the other animatronics like he's just another member of the band. His design is faithful, golden brown coloring, missing left ear with exposed wires, the whole deal. Visually, exactly what fans expected. But his behavior completely rewrites every metaphysical rule the games established for him. Here's where it gets interesting. Golden Freddy doesn't just exist inside the pizzeria. He shows up at Aunt Jane's suburban home, ambushes her, knocks her unconscious, and effectively removes her from the plot. He's not a hallucination. He's not a crash screen. He's a 7-foot animatronic bear committing a home invasion. That raises a question the movie never answers. If Golden Freddy can leave Freddy's, can the others? Because if so, that makes him potentially the most important animatronic in the entire movie universe. Some fans have tied his contradictory behavior, gentle with Abby one moment, aggressive the next, to the possibility of multiple souls inhabiting the same suit, which echoes his game lore pretty directly. But whether that's intentional storytelling or just the movie needing him to serve different plot functions, we don't know yet. The game games made Golden Freddy deliberately unknowable. The movie made him a guy who shows up to your house uninvited. Somehow both versions are terrifying, but if you think one rogue animatronic raises questions, wait until you hear about the character whose fate the entire movie is built around. The tragic fate of Garrett Schmidt. In the games, Michael Afton's guilt is built on cruelty. He shoved his little brother into the mouth of an animatronic as a prank, and the kid died. Publicly, in a restaurant. It's horrific, but it's born from a deliberate, mean-spirited act. Michael did something awful, and he knows it. The movie throws all of that out. Instead, Garrett Schmidt is abducted during a family camping trip around 1982. Mike looks away for a few seconds, and William Afton snatches his little brother, throws him in a car, and drives off while Garrett presses a toy airplane against the rear window. That's it. That's the entire moment that destroys Mike's life. Not a prank. Just 1 second of ordinary human inattention. Here's why that change matters. Your brother died because you were cruel is devastating, but it's specific. Most people can't relate to shoving a kid into an animatronic's jaw, but your brother vanished because you looked away for 1 second. Every parent, every older sibling, every babysitter has lived that fear. The movie makes Mike's guilt universal in a way the games never achieved. And then there's the conspiracy layer. Garrett isn't just one game character anymore. He's 3 stitched together. He's the crying child sibling dynamic with Mike, Charlotte Emily's kidnapping connection, and a missing child whose body is never found, meaning his fate can fuel an entire franchise without ever being answered. Mike reconstructs the abduction obsessively in his sleep using dream theory, replaying the memory nightly, trying to spot a detail he missed. It replaces the game's cryptic logbook puzzles with something visceral. You don't need to decode hidden text. You just watch a man torture himself with the worst moment of his life. But that toy airplane, it shows up later in Vanessa's father's trophy box, and the post-credits come, Find Me deliberately refuses to connect Garrett to any specific animatronic. He's not a mystery to solve in these first 2 films. He's the unresolved backbone of the entire franchise, which makes sense, because Mike's family situation is built entirely around that wound, and the movie rewrites that too. Mike Schmidt's new family backstory. This is the one that kept the fandom arguing for 2 straight years. Is movie Mike secretly Michael Afton? The answer is no, and the first film made sure you know it. In the games, Mike Schmidt is almost certainly an alias for Michael Afton, William's son. The survival logbook is packed with coded messages and personal details that only make sense if the night guard and the killer's kid are the same person. His employment at Freddy's isn't desperation, it's infiltration, a guilt-driven mission to undo what his father built and free the souls trapped inside. The film throws all of that out. Movie Mike has zero connection to the Afton family. He's a broke, exhausted guardian who's been fired from multiple jobs before Steve Raglan slides a clipboard across the desk and offers him the worst job in America. He doesn't take the night shift because he's hunting his father's legacy. He takes it because if he doesn't, he loses custody of Abby. That's the whole reason. His defining trauma is different too. Game Michael carries the weight of the bite of 83, where his cruelty directly kills his younger brother. Movie Mike looked away during a camping trip. One moment of inattention and Garrett was gone. It's not malice. It's the kind of mistake anyone could make, which is exactly the point. Here's where the choice gets quietly radical. By removing the Afton bloodline, the film stops the franchise from being a closed family curse where every tragedy loops back to one surname. Afton becomes a systemic predator who targets the economically invisible. Mike isn't special because of his last name. He's exactly the kind of person nobody would notice going missing, and that separation opens a door for the sequel to explore Michael Afton as his own character entirely. 2 different men, 2 different responses to the same monster. One protects, one inherits. But if splitting Mike from the Afton family changes his story, wait until you see what they did to the little sister he's trying to protect. Abby Schmidt replacing Elizabeth Afton. In the games, Elizabeth Afton's story is a tragedy that already happened. She's dead before you ever meet her. She ignored her father's warnings, walked up to Circus Baby, got scooped into the animatronic's interior by a claw mechanism hidden inside its chest, and became the manipulative voice haunting Sister Location. It's horrible, but it's past tense. There's nothing left to save. Abby Schmidt is a tragedy that might still happen, and that distinction changes everything. The films take Elizabeth's entire arc and flip the direction of agency. In the games, a child seeks the animatronic. In the movies, a predatory adult feeds a child to the machine. Afton doesn't lose his daughter to curiosity. He actively tries to lure someone else's sister into an empty Circus Baby shell sitting in a back room room of the pizzeria, which is, you know, not ideal. And here's where it gets interesting. Abby isn't just a passive victim waiting to be rescued. She's the narrative hinge between the human world and the ghost world. Her drawings of the animatronics and missing children function as supernatural intelligence no adult can access. She communicates with spirits through crayon on paper. She's the reason the animatronics eventually turn on Afton, because she draws the truth and shows it to them. The fan community picked up on this immediately. The Abby Beth theory is one of the most widely discussed ideas in the movie fandom. You don't put an empty circus baby shell in a back room, frame it with that much visual weight, and call it an accident. But here's the real tension. That baby shell is explicitly shown as currently empty. Abby survived the first film. She's alive going into the sequel. So is this the movie continuity's way of saying we can break the cycle? Or is it just delaying the inevitable? Keeping her alive gives Mike an active redemption arc for failing Garrett, but it also leaves a loaded gun on the table that any future sequel can fire. Speaking of loaded guns the movies planted early, let's talk about Vanessa, because her identity swap might be the most consequential character change in the entire franchise. The identity and role of Vanessa in Security Breach. Vanessa is an antagonistic security guard, theorized but never confirmed to be Afton's daughter, often framed as a pawn of Glitch Trap rather than a self-determining agent. The film basically said, you know that fan theory everyone argued about for years? It's true, and we're doing it in movie 1. That's a bold move. The first film makes her a local police officer who explicitly confirms mid-film that William Afton, Steve Raglan, is her father. No hedging, no cryptic minigame codes, just textual canon. And here's where it gets weird. Her moral alignment is almost inverted from her game counterpart. Movie Vanessa is protective of Mike and Abby, shoots her own father in the climax, and is stabbed by him in return. She's not the cold, controlled security guard chasing Gregory through the pizzaplex. She's a woman who knows exactly what her father did, has spent years covering for him out of fear or conditioning, and finally breaks that cycle at immense personal cost. But wait, the film ends with Vanessa hospitalized after being stabbed by William. Her fate left deliberately ambiguous. She chose the right side, took a knife for it, and now exists in a narrative limbo that could take her literally anywhere in a sequel. The games turned her into Vanny through digital mind control. The films have set up something arguably more compelling. A woman who already broke free from her father's influence but paid a brutal physical price for it. Whatever happens next, the groundwork is real trauma, not a VR rabbit suit. Her arc creates a direct counterpoint to William himself. One Afton chooses violence and legacy, the other chooses to destroy it at the cost of her own body. The evidence is textual, explicit, and impossible to miss. Vanessa Shelley is an Afton. She shoots William to save Mike and Abby. She gets stabbed for it, and she's left bleeding out in a hospital bed. That's not a theory. That's the plot. But at least Vanessa tried to stop her father before ending up in critical condition, unlike the career counselor who spent decades luring victims into his own personal haunted house. William Afton's career. In the games, William Afton's life outside of Freddy Fazbear's Pizza is basically a blank page. You know him as the purple guy. You know he killed children, but what did he do during the day? Where did he go when he wasn't wearing a bunny suit and committing atrocities? The games never answer that. He just exists as this floating specter of evil with zero civic footprint, which is terrifying, but also, logistically, makes absolutely no sense. The movie fixes this brilliantly. Enter Steve Raglan, career counselor, fluorescent lighting, drab office. The kind of guy who sits across from you at a government desk and tells you your resume needs work while sipping coffee from a mug that probably says world's okayest counselor. He's quirky, he's sardonic, he's the guy you write off immediately. And that's exactly the point, because Steve Raglan is William Afton. His entire carefully constructed persona exists for one reason: to find economically desperate adults whose disappearance nobody would investigate too hard. He has access to unemployment case files. He knows who's broke, who's isolated, who's one missed rent payment away from falling off the map entirely. He's not picking random victims. He's selecting them like a predator with a spreadsheet. A career counselor decides whether desperate people deserve a second chance. Raglan uses that exact power to send them to their deaths. That's not just a disguise. That's a statement about who society lets become invisible. Matthew Lillard's performance sells the entire thing. He plays Raglan with this loose, goofy energy that weaponizes your expectations. You've seen Lillard in Scooby-Doo. You've seen him be the funny guy, so your brain categorizes him as comic relief and moves on, which means when the yellow Yellow Rabbit mask comes on, it hits different. He makes you believe every word of Afton's genius-level intellect, while simultaneously making you feel stupid for not seeing it sooner. The career counselor angle also broadens Afton's reach far beyond any single restaurant. If he's embedded in civic systems, his influence could extend anywhere institutional power intersects with vulnerable people. Evil doesn't just operate in spite of systems, it operates through them. But if you think Afton's transformation into a monster was purely metaphorical, wait until you see what happens when the Spring Bonnie suit decides to make it literal. The Springlock failure. This is the moment. The one fans waited over a decade to see on screen, and the film's version is so fundamentally different from the game's that it barely qualifies as the same event. In FNAF 3, William Afton dies alone. He returns to an abandoned Freddy's location decades after his crimes, dismantling animatronics to destroy the haunted suits. When the vengeful spirits corner him, he hides inside a Springlock suit in the back room. Moisture and jostling trigger the mechanisms. They snap inward. He dies off screen in the dark with nobody watching. It's a private, pathetic end for a man who spent his whole life hiding behind masks. The film throws all of that out the window. In the 2023 movie, Afton's Springlock failure happens in full view of everyone who matters. He's wearing the Yellow Rabbit suit, surrounded by the animatronics he's controlled for years. And the thing that kills him isn't moisture or a wobbly floorboard. It's a child's drawing. Let me explain. Abby draws a picture revealing Afton as the man who murdered the ghost children. The spirits realize they've been manipulated, and the animatronics turn on him. Mr. Cupcake tears a chunk out of the suit's abdomen, exposing the internal Springlock mechanisms. The locks reposition one by one, driving metal into flesh. That's either poetic justice or death by arts and crafts, depending on your tolerance for sentimentality. The PG-13 rating visibly constrains the scene. It relies almost entirely on audible clicks and Matthew Lillard's facial contortions to sell the horror. It works, but it's doing a lot of heavy lifting with very little visible gore. But the real divergence isn't the cause of death, it's the context. Game Afton dies in an accidental entrapment while fleeing ghosts. Film Afton dies because the children he murdered collectively chose to end him after a little girl showed them the truth. One is a mechanical accident, the other is a verdict, and that matters for what comes next. In the post-credits scene, Springtrap's eye glows in the ruins of Freddy's, implying the original spirits were containing Afton's evil until they departed. The moment they leave, his restraints disappear. He's not a distant footnote anymore. He's a personal wound that just reopened. But if the Springlock failure changes how Afton dies, the next change rewrites the very souls that killed him. The nature of the ghost children. In the games, Charlotte Emily is one of the most tragic figures in the entire franchise. Henry's daughter, murdered by Afton outside a locked Freddy's, possessing the puppet and using that power to do something genuinely selfless. She finds the other dead children, she gives them life, she binds their souls to animatronic shells so they won't just disappear into nothing. The give gifts give life. Minigame reframes the haunted animatronics not as monsters, but as victims, given a second chance by a child who never got one herself. The movies took that and lit it on fire. In the film continuity, Afton houses the bodies directly inside the animatronics, then brainwashes their spirits using drawings of himself as their friend. He's not a distant cause. He's an ongoing controller, actively manipulating dead children into killing for him night after night, which is, you know, not ideal. But the puppet is where things really fall apart. In FNAF 2, the marionette possesses Vanessa to physically leave the pizzeria, manipulates events beyond the restaurant's walls, and targets people with an aggression that goes way beyond self-defense. This isn't a protective guardian. This is closer to Circus Baby from Sister Location, a manipulative entity whose idea of justice involves a body count that would make Afton himself raise an eyebrow. Here's where the full picture gets genuinely unsettling. When the spirits finally depart in FNAF 2, they warn Mike that something stronger may soon escape Freddy's. The post-credits Springtrap stinger confirms it. The children weren't just haunting the pizzeria, they were containing Afton's evil. Their departure didn't free them, it freed him. Think about the chain of control. Afton controlled the children, Charlotte possessed Vanessa, and somewhere in the ruins, Springtrap's eye just opened. The games gave us confused victims slowly finding peace through a tragic guardian. The movies gave us perpetually manipulable weapons. Ghost children passed from one puppeteer to the next, never truly directing their own fate. That's not a small tweak to the lore. That's a rewrite of the franchise's entire emotional core. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.